Everything I said up until now, I've said in some form before, but this is the custom part of the show. So Newaygo is really nice to study and easy to study because it's geographically, it's so small. It's also small enough that with the proper connections, I wouldn't say it's all walkable in one walk, but it's certainly all bikeable. And people who live in this map really have the opportunity for a walkable, bikeable lifestyle anywhere in town. And you notice, of course, you have the downtown, the lower part of the town here, and then it's up Quarter Line, up State Road, and then these two different nice little neighborhoods of network streets, small blocks, just like you want to see, small streets, all very, pretty rural, so there's no real problem walking in these areas. And then the beautiful creek that goes through. And I'd talk more about the creek, but this isn't towards a more hikeable Newaygo, it's more walkable Newaygo. The creek is great, and it's a tremendous asset. I really haven't focused on it. I enjoyed visiting it. And then you have the area down here I showed you, which is what's called the industrial park area, which is being developed according to the wrong standard, but isn't that hard to change. So let's talk about streets first. State Road, as it comes through downtown, we already talked about it. It's actually about 48 feet. I measured it. We went out to measure, and the first thing we did, a truck ran over our tape. So Scott spent $15 on a tape that was immediately destroyed by this truck. So, but I can tell you it's exactly 48.5 feet from curb face to curb face, and now it's roughly like this. You see the parking lane, two driving lanes, right, and a turn lane, a protected sidewalk and an unprotected sidewalk. And the exact same amount of space can be this. 3 10-foot driving lanes, 2 big parking lanes. I've shown 9 feet just to make these 10 feet wide. Now, there might be an argument to make them a little bit wider. I probably wouldn't agree with that argument, but there's room, right? There's room. But this is what your Main Street can be. And we had a great meeting with MDOT today, and they were very enthusiastic. We didn't make them sign anything, but they were very enthusiastic about the possibility of this solution that essentially completes your Main Street. And there are even places where no one's turning where you could have like a little refuge island for help crossing the street better. So you're going from this to that, right? It's still 3 lanes, but we're squeezing them together so this lane isn't massive anymore, and you get parking on both sides. And now you have the classic American Main Street. That's the easiest, the fastest, the cheapest thing you can do, and it sounds like you can do it soon. So that's great. Then you turn the corner, right? We're heading towards the bridge now. This is Quarter Line over here, and the street actually gets about 8 feet wider. And now you've got, and you have no sidewalk here. Maybe the sidewalk was scraped at one point. So you've got 4 really wide lanes, no parking at all, 15-foot lanes, 14-foot lanes. So there's room here not only to stay to that 3-lane section and have parking on both sides, but also to build out this curb. And I'm not suggesting a lot of construction, but one place I think it makes sense to do construction is in front of City Hall, where there's basically no sidewalk. And I'm suggesting adding 8 feet to this curb. It's not necessary, but if you don't do it, these lanes will be too wide, right? If you want 10-foot lanes and 8-foot parking lanes, that gives you an extra actually 8 feet or so here. So I'm recommending that for that stretch. And if you look at Old State Road and Old Quarter Line, and we'll talk about Quarter Line in a minute, but here's the corner. Watch what happens to this curb. That's before, this is after. See what's being proposed? Before and after. And what you see is these bulb outs, see this curb extensions embrace the parking lanes. Here, 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 and then you round the corner, you make sure trucks can fit, you use your truck template, you round the corner, and you end up with a much, much tighter intersection than you currently have, which people won't speed through. And this is a bit of construction, and it's the construction, whether or not you extend this is the piece of construction I really think you should do, right there. And that'll make that a very calm corner. Now, here's the construction that maybe you shouldn't do, but people were really concerned about this intersection north of the river, right? Here's the bridge crossing the river. What's this street? Croton. And it's so big because these are 4 lanes. Look at these giant curb radii. This is left turn lane, extra width. It's so big and blown out that without moving a single curb or decreasing it, you can fit a roundabout in there. And you have this problem here where people are speeding down the hill and, or speeding down this hill. Every now and then someone's brakes give out. A lot of collisions in this area. And what people are concerned about is that people are arriving at downtown speeding. Because they're speeding through this intersection, they're speeding over the bridge. We'll talk about the bridge in a second. But no one could speed through this intersection if it had a simple roundabout in it. Now this is expensive. This is paint. This is paint, all paint through here. You have to merge from 2 lanes to 1 coming down the hill. But then the only real construction is in this area where the green is. And that gets you a roundabout. But then the great thing about a roundabout is that it gives you the opportunity of a 2-lane bridge. And I had this crazy idea, and we've introduced it in other places, like in Tulsa. Why not park on the bridge? Because you need more parking. So the bridge has 4 lanes and 23 feet from the median to the edge, 2 wide lanes on each side. Obviously, in a non-snow emergency condition, if you have a roundabout, you don't need all 4 lanes. So you go from this. My program doesn't let me draw bridges, so now you've got a causeway, but you get the idea. You go from this to this with parking on the side. And as you get off the bridge and into downtown, remember, this is where we've proposed the 3-lane section, so we have to transition from 2 lanes to 3. And here's where the typical thing would be. Let's put a left-hand turn lane in here. I forgot to include my segment on left-hand turn lanes earlier, my generic segment. Left-hand turn lanes are great where a lot of people are turning left. But if a lot of people aren't turning left, there's no reason to have them. And moreover, when you have one, it widens the street and causes people to go faster. And one of the decisions we made in Oklahoma City was we're not going to have any left-hand turn lanes unless a lot of people are turning left. Almost no one is turning left here. So I'm suggesting the bridge has 2 lanes with parallel parking, and here it transitions to 3. People will turn left here, coming north. This is the 3-lane section we've already talked about. This is the 2-lane section. This is the transition. Now, this is what I'm proposing for the bridge. There's another alternative, which is if we can get rid of this pesky lump in the middle, it could also be a bikeway. But this is the principle. This is the first proposal because it requires no construction, so it's cheaper and faster. Now, we talked about quarter line, 48 feet through here, parked on both sides, but not marked, so people really aren't parking on both sides. That could go from this, in which there's few people parking, to that, where you have actually, it says perpendicular, it's actually angle parking, 60 degree or 45 degree, depending on the width, angle parking. It fits very easily. So you're going from this now, watch this stretch, to that. Parallel parking, angle parking. And now the curb comes out and embraces it and curves around, and you've got a really tight intersection. Justice and Wood, both at their wider points about 45 feet. So, notice it's skinnier here and wider there. Oops. So here they are now, the wide parts, 14.5-foot driving lanes. Make them the right size, you get what has to be a 45-degree parking lane that's 15 feet deep. So you go from this to that. Angle here, parallel, switches to angle, switches back to parallel, then the corner. It's just paint. But now you've got a ton more parking in your downtown and safer streets. There's no downside to having more parking. It's better for the merchants. Now here's Barton. And conveniently, Barton is just an extra 12 feet wide. Like someone just decided this is where you land the 747. It's on Barton Street. And here it is now, 18-foot lanes. So you can have a really luxurious 5-foot bike lanes with 3-foot buffers on this street. That's Barton. Now, we talked a bit about crossings. Here's the main intersection, and what happens when you build all this is you get a crossing there, and a crossing there, but I'm suggesting perhaps a speed table where the whole thing is raised. And it's not like a speed bump, it's much gentler, but it's probably cobblestone or brick, and you rumble a little bit when you go over that. It very much calms the intersection. I'm suggesting that you, well, I was just surprised this morning. I watched this light. I started watching it, I took pictures, I walked around, it never went red. Yeah. Eventually it went red, but we've talked to MDOT about experimenting with some different timing. My goal would be able to have the cycle so efficient and so smart that it can also have an automatic pedestrian phase. Maybe not a scramble, maybe not one where you can cross in every direction, but just have pedestrian crossing being something you don't have to beg for, right? They call them beg buttons when you have to push them. And then here's the mid-block section where everyone wants to cross. It's next to the green area right here, right? And there's this slot to the parking lot. And this is the best spot if you're going to do a mid-block. What's happening now is people are mid-block crossing, including Mayor Hartwell, mid-block crossing all over. And it'd be much safer to concentrate it in one place and perhaps have some sort of marking. So have bulb outs here that embrace the parking so they shorten the crossing distance. Maybe build it or just stripe it. Maybe raise it or just stripe it. Because no one's turning left in this spot, you could have a refuge island right there as well in the center lane, but designate one spot in the middle of the street. Maybe have what's called a hawk signal, which is an automatic flashing signal that, or a push button that flashes immediately the minute you push it, as opposed to having to wait. But I think that's a good spot for that. Bikes. This is going faster than I thought it would. You'll be out of here in no time.